Today's topic is infections of testes and epididymis. This is the brief anatomy of testes and epididymis. You can very well see. Do you have pointer? No. The epididymis lies on the top of the cranial region of the testes. It has three parts: caput, body, and the caudal part. Whatever secretions testes make through rete testis goes into the epididymis, and then with the vas deferens it comes out. So this is the brief anatomy of testes. Our topic is orchitis. Orchitis is the infection of the testes. The inflammation of the testes is commonly associated with inflammation of the epididymis. Acute orchitis can be divided into specific orchitis and the viral orchitis. Specific orchitis can be caused by a wide variety of infections diseased by hematogenous routes. Men with orchitis and epididymoorchitis over the age of 35 years most commonly have bacterial infections with predominantly gram-negative bacteria like E. coli and Pseudomonas. Similar to the distribution of age and infection in the acute epididymitis. So usually bacterial epididymis and orchitis, they run hand in hand. Whenever there is orchitis, epididymis has to be there. So the term orchitis is separate, but it is commonly used simultaneously, epididymoorchitis. Other reported infections include Treponema pallidum, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Candiduria can lead to epididymoorchitis as well. The viral orchitis is most commonly caused by mumps virus. As you all know, it happens in the pediatric age group, and despite vaccination that almost eliminated this disease by 2001, sporadic outbreaks have occurred since, involving a high percentage of persons with history of vaccination. The usual clinical scenario in mumps is prodrome of headache, malaise, and myalgias, followed by parotitis. So it is the infection of the parotid gland, which through the viremia goes into the testes and causes orchitis, and later on it destroys the testes. So this is the clinical feature of the mumps orchitis. It develops 2 to 3 weeks after exposure and lasting for 2 to 3 days. Orchitis is usually associated with epididymitis and fever, resolving within 1 week. Atrophy of the testes is the final result of the mumps. It occurs in half of the cases and can be associated with oligospermia and decreased fertility, but usually not complete infertility. As you all know, testes has two functions. One is hormonal functions, it produces testosterone, and the other function is to produce sperm. So whenever there is a loss in the testicular volume, like in the mumps orchitis, it loses both the functions, the production of testosterone as well as the production of the sperms. So this is a very severe form of orchitis, which fortunately now after vaccination has reduced drastically. Another virus that is associated with orchitis is human immunodeficiency virus type 1 HIV-1. This is the result of direct infection of the virus and the testes and a consequence of immunosuppression from the infection. Orchitis is symptoms of infectious mononucleosis, indicating that the Epstein-Barr virus may have a direct effect on the testes. HSV, herpes simplex 2 virus, has been detected in the testes as well. Many other viruses have reported to infect the testes, including dengue, smallpox, and chickenpox. So these are the wide viruses with different names cause orchitis. Autoimmune orchitis is defined as autoimmune aggression of the testes characterized by presence of anti-sperm antibodies. Conditions that produce symptomatic orchitis are classified as secondary autoimmune orchitis as opposed to primary autoimmune orchitis, which is characterized by the presence of ASA, anti-sperm antibodies, no associated systemic disease, and they are asymptomatic as well. So there is a barrier known as blood-testis barrier, which protects the sperm from being exposed to the blood. Blood has all we know as circulating antibodies are there. So the antibodies of the own body, they recognize sperm as the foreign body. So whenever there is a breach in the blood-testis barrier, the body's antibodies, they recognize sperm as the foreign body. This leads to attack on the testicular architecture and leads to orchitis and later on damage. Primary autoimmune orchitis is primarily a problem in the evolution of male infertility. The main cause of secondary autoimmune orchitis are usually associated with primary vasculitis, particularly Behçet's disease and polyarteritis nodosa. The testis is an, which I have already explained right just now, the testis is an immune privileged site. But in autoimmune orchitis, the blood testis barrier is altered by T cell mediated inflammatory response with an increased production of pro-inflammatory cytokines such as IFN, IL, interleukins, all the kinds of interleukins, naming 1, 6, 12, 17, etc. And the resultant production of anti-sperm antibodies. Clinical features of orchitis. As you all see, we can see it, there is a pain in the testis which radiates to groin due to associated folliculitis. There is fever, tenderness in the testes. Secondary hydrocele is common. Urinary infection is often noted. So whenever we see a patient with orchitis, we can see the redness in the scrotum. All inflammatory signs are there. Increase in size and loss of rugosity, these are all the clinical features of the patient with having orchitis. So how to evaluate these kind of patients? We should take a medical history, should include circumstances of onset, including sexual history, recent instrumentation or surgery, and prior episodes. So the infection can reach the testes through the urine tract infections. Any infection in the urethra can retrograde transmit into the testes, and also through blood. So there are two routes. One is the blood route and the other is a local route. Our history of trauma should be elicited. The duration of pain is important. That gives the prime differential diagnosis is testicular torsion. So whenever there is swelling and pain, the other differential diagnosis should be considered is torsion of the testes. A history of symptoms of upper respiratory infection and parotitis consistent with the mumps should be established. Fever, sweat, headache, and back pain are common in infections with brucellosis. Inquiry should also be made about the history of multiple conditions that can cause secondary autoimmune orchitis. Physical examination should include assessment of signs of symptoms, involvement of including fever and tachycardia. Examination of scrotum usually reveals a tender testis and spermatic cord, which I have already explained in my previous slide. Urine culture should be obtained in all patients to evaluate whether the patient is having UTI and secondary orchitis. Urine culture has been reported to be positive in 38% patients diagnosed with isolated orchitis and 37.5% of those diagnosed with orchitis, epididymoorchitis. In sexually active patients, especially with epididymal involvement, testing of STD should be performed. Imaging with scrotal ultrasound can help to distinguish testicular torsion from orchitis and identify testicular tumors and abscesses. So, one differential diagnosis is the torsion of the testis, the other is malignancy, and the other is abscess. So, whenever there is a scrotal swelling, you should keep in all these in mind. This is the ultrasound picture. The black portion shows secondary hydrocele and increased vascularity, as you all can see in the ultrasound picture. And this is how we evaluate. Whenever there is increased vascularity, we should consider that it should be inflammatory pathology. Whenever there is decreased vascularity, you should consider it to be a torsion testis. So you can see on the black one, it is damaged due to torsion. So this is a torsion testis on the black one side, and the right one is okay. How to treat such kind of patients? Either doxycycline or quinolone or amoxiclav should be the initial treatment of choice in the young man. The antibiotic treatment should be started immediately. Antibiotic treatment continues for at least 2 weeks. In older men, quinolones are the usual initial treatment, but if there is evidence of systemic sepsis, then intravenous antibiotics directed at urinary pathogens may be valuable. If an organism is isolated from the urine, this simplifies the choice of antibiotics. All patients should drink plenty of fluids. Local measure includes scrotal sport and analgesia are helpful. Antibiotic treatment should continue for at least 2 weeks. I've already explained. If suppuration occurs, then drainage should be done. Secondary autoimmune orchitis may be treated with systemic medications, including corticosteroids, immunosuppressive medications such as azithromycin, azathioprine, or IV cyclophosphamide, and intravenous immunoglobulin. Patients with orchitis need to follow up, especially those whose symptoms do not resolve, to rule out disc torsion or testicular tumor. Patients should also be counseled that although the acute pain can resolve in 1 to 3 days, the ensuing inflammation can last for 2 to 4 weeks and completely resolving. This is a specific form of orchitis known as granulomatous orchitis, known as chronic orchitis. Granulomatous orchitis is marked by presence of granulomatous inflammation in the testes and has multiple causes, including tuberculosis, brucellosis, actinomycosis, syphilis, leprosy, and sarcoidosis. I think you have already read these kind of words in your pathology classes and microbiology classes. Idiopathic granulomatous orchitis is a rare inflammatory condition of unknown cause, characterized by non-specific granulomatous inflammation with multinucleated giant cells without caseation. Diagnosis is usually made after orchidectomy for suspected malignancy, as the presentation is similar on ultrasound. Patients may have chronic pain but may also present with painless testicular enlargement. Just as has been described in the prostate, Ig4 related inflammation has emerged as the cause of scrotal content pain affecting the testes cells and perivasal tissues, causing fibrosis. Ig4 positive cells have also been reported in specimens with idiopathic granulomatous orchitis in men with no history of systemic Ig4 disease. Another inflammatory condition that can cause orchitis is malakoplakia. The distinction from granulomatous orchitis is a dense infiltrate of histiocytes and pathopneumonic of Michels-Gutmann bodies. Next topic is epididymitis. Acute epididymitis is defined as pain, swelling, and inflammation of epididymis that lasts for more than 6 months. Epididymitis is a common condition. The incidence range from 25 to 65 per 10,000 persons year and accounts for about 6 lakh cases per year in outpatient settings in the United States. So it's very common. This is US data, not an Indian data. The average age of acute epididymitis is variable and affects pediatric as well as adult population. I've already explained the anatomy of epididymis. Widely accepted route of infection is the ascent of microorganisms from urethra. So there is bloodborne infection also and ascent from the urethra as well. The positive organisms are men over 35 as well as children. The organisms are similar to those causing urinary tract infections such as E. coli. In men under 35 who are sexually active, chlamydia, trachomatis, and Neisseria gonorrhoeae are more common. So these two bacteria, they cause urethritis. This urethritis, this bacteria then ascends through the vas deferens retrogradely and goes up to the epididymis, leads to epididymitis. Risk factor in the older man without sexually transmitted epididymitis include history of prostate infection or UTI, recent surgical intervention in the urinary tract, bladder outlet obstruction such as BPH or stricture, uncircumcised penis, or congenital deformity of the urinary tract, and immunosuppression. These are the common reasons for epididymitis. Clinical evaluation is the same. The signs and symptoms of acute epididymitis include pain and swelling. There should be pain and swelling in the scrotal region. Swelling usually starts at the chorda part of the epididymis, then ascends to reach the rest of the epididymis and then to the testes. Presentation is unilateral in 96% of the cases. Patients may present with fever defined as greater than 38 degrees centigrade or with an epididymal abscess. Dysuria is reported in 1/3 of the patients. You should take medical history that includes circumstance of onset, including sexual history, recent instrumentation or surgery, and prior episodes. Physical examination should include assessment for the signs of systemic involvement, including fever and tachycardia. Whenever there is infection, inflammation, fever, there should be signs and symptoms of tachycardia as well. So the patients having running fever, we should have tachycardia as well. Examination of the scrotum usually reveals a tender epididymis and spermatic cord. Induration of the chorda or whole epididymis is frequently present, and orchitis is noticed in half of the patients. That is why I use the term initially as epididymo-orchitis instead of orchitis and epididymis separately. Diagnostic evaluation should include laboratory studies to assess the white cell count, urine for routine urine culture and susceptibility, assessment of inflammation by leukocyte esterase on first void urine, or microscopic examination of sediment from first urine void. In older man, the acute epididymitis and assessment of post-void residual urine should be made to rule out urinary retention as a cause of UTI and subsequent epididymitis. So these were all explained in my previous slide. UTI should be ruled out first. All suspected cases of acute epididymitis should be tested for chlamydia trachomatis, Neisseria gonorrhoeae, with NAAT, nucleic acid amplification test. Urine bacterial culture should be obtained in men with sexually transmitted enteric infections and in older men with epididymitis caused by genitourinary bacteria, bacteriuria. Imaging study includes scrotal ultrasound. All kind of inflammation in the testes and swelling should be confirmed by ultrasound examination. Common ultrasound features include hydrocele epididymal enlargement, hyperperfusion, and testicular involvement. This is an important tool to confirm the diagnosis and to rule out testicular torsion as a cause of acute scrotal pain. This slide again shows hypervascularity on the right side, and on the left side is a normal vascularity. This shows inflammation, that is epididymitis. Differential diagnosis of all the acute scrotal swelling should include testicular torsion, torsion of the appendix of the testis, inguinal hernia, testicular carcinoma, pain from varicocele, scrotal or testicular abscesses, acute orchitis, and testicular trauma. These should be considered in all kind of scrotal enlargement or pain or swelling. Now we come to treatment. For symptoms relief, the traditional recommendations are bed rest, evaluation of the scrotum, and local cooling. NSAIDs medication can be useful. Most patients can be managed on an OPD basis, but those with elevated blood cell counts and fever should be admitted and should be administered IV antibiotics. Antimicrobial therapy depends on the most likely pathogen. The CDC guidelines divide this into three groups: acute epididymitis likely caused by STD, an enteric organism, and likely only caused by enteric organism. For the first group, the recommendation is ceftriaxone 250 mg single IM dose plus doxycycline orally twice per day for 10 days. For the second group, levofloxacin or ofloxacin is to be substituted for doxycycline. And for the third group, which is caused by enteric organism only, the third group, only levofloxacin is helpful. Men with confirmed chlamydia or gonorrhea should also be tested for other STDs, including HIV, and their sex partner should also be referred for evaluation and treatment. Then how to follow up? This is recommended that men whose symptoms do not resolve within 72 hours should be re-evaluated. Follow-up ultrasound may be needed in patients who are not clinically responding to rule out progression of an infection to the abscess or testicular infarction, which would require surgical treatment. Close follow-up of urine cultures for susceptibility is also important given to increasing rates of fluoroquinolones-resistant bacteria. Then comes chronic epididymitis. The definition of chronic epididymitis is similar to that of orchialgia. That includes symptoms of discomfort, pain for at least 3 months, localized to one or both epididymics. Classification of chronic epididymitis are as being one of the three categories: inflammatory, post-obstructive, and chronic epidymyalgia. Causes of inflammatory groups include infection from chlamydia, post-infective acute bacterial epididymitis, granulomatous from tuberculosis, drug-induced from amiodarone, and idiopathic inflammatory. So there are three groups: inflammatory, which includes all the bacteria, and drug-induced. Then the patients with AIDS are also prone to develop tubercular epidermitis. The post-operative obstructive group includes pain associated with congenital, acquired, or iatrogenic obstructions such as post-infective or post-surgical, including post-vasectomy. Treatment includes typically complain of intermittent episodes of discomfort, and the epididymis feel like thickened and tender. The treatment involves use of antibiotics, usually quinolones and or doxycycline, and anti-inflammatory agents for 4 to 6 weeks. Epididectomy or orchidectomy can be considered if there is no resolution, although some patients continue to suffer from pain despite surgery. Ruling out of malignancy allows for counseling the patient on being on the benign nature of the end of the condition and observation if symptoms are mild. Scrotal support and warm compression may be beneficial. Many types of medications have been used, including antibiotics, anti-inflammatory, phytotherapy, and anxiolytics. Tubercular epididymitis is discussed here separately because it is a very important topic, commonly seen in Indian OPD. The epididymis, the second most common GU genitourinary site of hematogenous seeding after the kidney is involved in 10 to 55% of GU TB patients. Infection is bilateral in 34%. The disease initially affects the more vascular globus minor. Granulomas in the epididymal epithelium elicit chronic inflammation leading to fibrous narrowing and obliteration of the lumen. The frequency with which the lower pole of the epididymis is involved first indicates that the infection is usually retrograde from tubercular focus in seminal vesicles. This is an important point. The infection and the granuloma forms in the tubercular epididymis in the caput part, not the lowermost part of the epididymis, not the caput part. With disease progression, large caseous granulomas result in nodular epididymis. On examination, the epididymis may appear swollen or hardened. Granulomas may adhere to the overlying skin, ulcerate, and up to 50% of patients, tubercular sinus tract develop on the posterior surface of the scrotum. After the infection spread to the vas deferens, it becomes thickened and beaded on examination as a result of nodular scarring. Treatment, as we all know, we should start anti-tubercular regime. The usual regime is 4 drug anti-tubercular drugs simultaneously for 6 months. 5 different regimes of chemotherapy are used depending on the form of urogenital tuberculosis. Surgery to drain an abscess may be needed, or removal of chronically infected epididymis or testis may be necessary. If resolution does not occur within 2 months, epididectomy or orchidectomy is advisable. A course of anti-tubercular chemotherapy should be completed even if there is no evidence of disease elsewhere. All surgical procedures should be performed while on anti-tubercular medication. The treatment duration is then judged based on the history of the removed tissue. An indication for surgery is failure of scrotal mass to respond or increase in size after 3 weeks of anti-tubercular chemotherapy. The mass should be explored by an inguinal incision to rule out testicular or epididymal malignancy. So whenever you are suspecting a malignancy in a swollen up testis, you should remove this testis from the inguinal region instead of scrotal region. This completes our 2 topics of orchitis and epididymitis. Thank you very much.